Hey kids, welcome to Unit 1, Lesson 4, Instantiating Objects, Lesson number 3. This is going to be our first real lesson in Java. And what we're going to do is we're going to instantiate the missing painter object. And we've talked a little bit about instantiation, but let's take a minute and really talk about it. Instantiation is just a fancy word for creating. So we're just going to say create the missing painter object. Why would we want to do that? Well, remember back to one of our first videos, we talked about how Java is object oriented. That means you make a blueprint of an object, like a house. And then when you go to build a house, you use those blueprints, but you can modify it. Maybe your house is blue. Maybe it has bigger windows or smaller windows than a neighbor. Maybe it has a double front door. Maybe it has a garage. The idea is you work off the same blueprint to create those objects. Another great example of this is just you at the school. We create an object student. They have a class schedule. They have a home address. They have a phone number. They have an email. All of the students share those same things, but they're different. We create a blueprint for that student, and then each individual student is that object. So we instantiate you as a student when we create that schedule. And this goes to the core concepts of what object-oriented programming is. You're going to see this graph a lot throughout this class. You're definitely going to see this on the exam. The fundamental parts of object-oriented programming is an object, a class, inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, and encapsulation. You can see we're starting with the first one, the object. As we move through, we'll talk about each of these. Getting back to instantiating our missing painter object, how do we create this object? There is a syntax on how to do this. First, we call the class we want to create the object from. For this lesson, that is the painter class. Next, we have our reference variable, mrRhodes. The equal sign, and then a new keyword followed by the constructor we want to use. Remember, the constructor of a class creates an instance of that object. Don't worry too much about the constructor right now. We're going to learn all about that in an upcoming lesson. Normally, you can call your painter whatever you would like, but you can see here, they've already named it Blake. That means when we instantiate our painter object, we have to instantiate it with the variable name Blake, because that's the one that code.org chose for us. Little helpful hint here, if you go to the helpful tips and tricks tab and we click on it, you will always get a video that's kind of explaining the concept we're talking about in this lesson. And if you get confused, we even have a little helpful FAQ. So this will break down some of the vocabulary, give you some examples, and just all around, if you get lost, this is a very, very helpful little page. So back to our instructions here, we're going to run the program, observe the outcome, then instantiate a painter object. So they're telling us what we need to do in the program. Be sure to add comments to notes what your code does. We haven't talked too much about comments here. They're a lot like CSP. There are 3 different types of comments. Remember, there are regular, multi-line, and document. This is a multi-line right here. If we do 2 slashes, that's just a regular comment. And we'll talk about the document comment a little later. It's essentially like a multi-line comment, just setting up what's going on in your program. For this, I think they have this pretty well commented out what we're doing, so I don't think we need that. So let's start. First, we need to call the specific constructor or method we're going to use. And over here, they tell us which we want to do. We want to instantiate the painter object. So we're going to go painter. Notice it is capital. We have to name it the same exact name that they've already given, Blake. That's going to equal a new painter object. It doesn't take any additional parameters. So we're going to end our sentence. We do that with a semicolon. That means we're going to call from the painter class a new painter, Blake, and it's going to have all of the abilities that a painter class can have. And again, we're going to talk about this in the next couple of lessons. Let's go ahead and hit run and see if our object Blake is instantiated and our program runs. And there you go. Our object moved, turned left, moved some more, and then turned left once it got to the corner. Pretty neat. There are a couple key takeaways from this lesson. First is understanding this idea of object-oriented programming. Objects are just blueprints used to create other objects. We also learned about the 6 core principles of object-oriented programming. That is the object, the class, inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, and encapsulation. And we're going to see those a ton as we move through the rest of this class. Finally, we learned how to instantiate an object. First, we call the class we want to create the object from. For this lesson, that is the painter class. Next, we have our reference variable, mrRhodes. The equal sign, and then a new keyword followed by the constructor we want to use. Hopefully this video helped you understand how to instantiate objects a little better. As always, if you have any questions, come see me. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next video. See you later, kids. Bye. Bye.